Hey crafters, DM Scotty here. It's good to have you with me on this episode of the DM's Craft. Happy holidays to everyone. Hope you have great holidays and a lot of fun. So today's vid is kind of interesting. It's kind of a twofer vid. I'm doing a technique to show you how to make roads, easy roads, that you can use for your games. I'm also going to show you a little technique, a stamping technique, where you can make stamps to make stone patterns. So I'm going to use some stone pattern stamps on the road. It's an old imperial road that's fallen into disrepair, and it's partially dirt, partially some cobblestones, partially some gravel. So I'm going to show you how to do this, and you can use this cobblestone or brick technique on anything you do. You can make the stamp like I show you, and you can make castles or walls or anything you want with it. So it's a nice little technique to use, and I have used it before on a castle and it came out really well. But today I'm going to show you on how to use it on the road. Also, I'm going to talk about it's going to be a little longer at the end about talking about a road. I'm going to do a little road encounter and talk about it. And I think some people get confused about when to set up terrain, or if I just need to have terrain on the table all the time, or that kind of thing. And I think I've made it clear that what I do is I kind of do a story mode type thing, where we're just doing description and telling what our characters are doing and that kind of thing. And then when it comes down to like a combat or that kind of, where rounds count, then I break out the terrain, and then we start there. So like with an encounter proper. So there's kind of I think a lot of DMs don't really understand or aren't given enough instruction on the breakdown between say story mode and like combat mode. They don't really give a lot of detail, I think, in the game itself. And there are varying amounts that people want to go for story mode and having a whole setup. But generally what I do is we play a lot of things in story mode, and then when we get to a particular encounter, that's when I set up. And I just continue to give description or ask for rolls while I'm setting up, so the players are keeping engaged and they're not just sitting there waiting for me to set up the board. And I can usually set it up in about a minute, so it's pretty quick, or less. So it's pretty quick, but I try to keep them engaged while I'm doing that. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that at the end, which is a little more than I usually talk about after a crafting project. But okay, so I've rambled on enough. Let's go to the table and make some roads. Here's my starting piece, and this is just a plain piece of black poster board. I just got this at the dollar store. You can get these very cheap, usually about 50 cents each at the dollar store. So this is a great place to start because it's already black. I don't have to spray paint it black. You know how I like to start with a black base, and it's good to go. Now, one thing about poster board is it's kind of hard to see it when you draw on it. So I'm going to use a pencil. The pencil lead seems to show up pretty well on this black poster board, so I'm going to use that. Now really what I need to be concerned with when I'm making the road sections is as long as I make the end part the same width as the next piece, they'll all fit together. So I can make it that they all will connect if I want a long road. So I'm going to start with like a 4-inch, and I'll do that. And then I'm going to do 8 inches here, so it's another 4. And I'll turn that around. And just go to 8 there. Okay. Now, unlike a modern road, a regular road isn't going to be straight, so totally straight. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of freehand it like that. And I'll just freehand it like this. And like I said, remember, as long as the ends match the 4 inches, then you will be okay as far as the roads connecting. So now I don't want this straight edge here, so I probably should have done a little bit up, but I'm just going to go a little bit like that, so it's not totally straight on the edge there. So now I'm going to cut those out, or irregular, I should say. Now the reason I like to use poster board besides cardboard is it tends not to curl as much as the cardboard. So especially in the long strips like this, because we'll have no edging on here, just so it doesn't look like a modern road. And if you did want to do a modern road, you just would cut it straight. Of course, I would make it wider. This is more of for a fantasy road. So I've got those two strips. I have some left. Now, I wanted to make a few kind of like jogs or turn where the road kind of turns. What I'm going to do is I'm going to measure 4 from this corner. So I'll start here, and then I want to measure 4 at the opposite corner. And that'll allow me to give a little bit of jog in the road. So let's see here. So this way here, I'll just pull it. And I want to make sure I end up with the part here. And then I'll pull this one. And I'm just eyeballing this. The only important thing is that the ends match, not the middle. So if you're a little off in the middle, that's okay. So there we go. I've got that kind of jogging road there. Now I'll cut it out. All right. So now we have that that nice curved road. Now the nice thing about this is, see, I've got this here. I could just put this, connect it with the road here, and it kind of turns like that. I could also connect this end here, so it's a nice curved road, but it's still, I can still make a longer road if I want. And you can do any shapes and sizes of the road that you want to do. So that's what I'm going to do now. Now I need to worry about the detail on this road, so I'll go to that part. Now what I'm making is an old imperial road, so a lot of it has degraded, but there are parts where the cobblestones still show through. Most of it's dirt and gravel, but there are some parts of cobblestone. And how I'm gonna make a stamp to show those parts of cobblestone. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use this foam sheet. And you can get these at dollar stores, any craft store, any big box store. It's just a foam sheet. These are in the craft section. They're very cheap. What I'm going to do is use a ballpoint pen and my ruler. And so what I want to do is I'm going to measure a 1/2 inch, and I'm going to then divide that, so 1/4 inch, and the side too. And then I'm going to just connect the two. Draw that. It's become clear why I'm doing this in a few minutes. Okay. So now I've got that. Now what I want to do is I'm going to cut this out. Okay. So I've got that strip. Now what I want to do is I'm going to do 1/4 inch markings on this, but what I'm going to do is, instead of marking, I'm just going to pull all the way up. So I'll just, it doesn't have to be perfectly straight. This is an old cobblestone road that's degraded. Okay, that should be enough. So I cut that. So now you can see I've got all those little marks, the little boxes. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the 2 boxes. So I'll cut it like this, and I'll just cut all the way down. So now I've got all those cut, I will move on to the next phase and I'll show you that. Here I've got a piece of fairly stiff cardboard. It's normal cardboard. I'm going to use my ruler and measure out a couple inches. I want to use this as guide marks. Okay, so now I've got my pieces of brick. What I'm going to use the white glue because the hot glue will dry too fast. It won't give me the work time. So I want a little bit of work time with this, so I'm going to use the white glue, and I'm just going to apply some down. Okay, so I got that down. Now what I'm going to do is start putting down the bricks, but I'm going to put them down with the half side up so I can see. So I'll put that, and then that, and I'm not touching. I want a little bit of room between the bricks. And see, this helps, the half mark helps me to gauge where to lay the brick. So there we go, I've got that. Now I'll just start filling in. So let me give you a little closer look at that. Oops. See that? Okay, now I'll start filling in. So put a brick here on the edge. Here. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. Now I'm not going to fill in those end parts. And remember, this is an old cobblestone road, so it doesn't have to be perfect. If they're not quite perfect, don't worry about it. And I have some more bricks left, so I'm going to go ahead and extend it a little further. All right, I'm happy with that. I think that's good. So there, take a look at that. So it looks like a brick wall, almost. So before I do any cutting on this to reduce the size of it for the stamp, I'm going to let this dry, and then we'll prepare it for stamping. My brick pattern has dried, and so it's all ready to go. So what I'm going to do to make my stamp is I'm going to use a scissors, and I'll just cut it. So I'll cut up where the bricks end, and then I'll cut on this side where the bricks end. Okay, now, so basically what I'm going to do is use the stamp like this, but to make it a little easier to use, I'm going to cut a few pieces off here. And I'm going to kind of make a handle. And this is something you wouldn't have to do, but so I'm just kind of guesstimating. So that'll help give me a little bit of a handle on this thing. So what I'm going to do is glue that on with my trusty glue gun. So I'll grab that. Okay, so I've got a really nice stamper there now. So I can just pick this up, stamp it down with that nice brick pattern, and get those cobblestones on the road. So now we'll pull up our road, and I'll show you how to do that. Now for this part, I want sections of the cobblestone to have appeared to have survived the ravages of time. So I'm going to use my stamp that I made. I'm going to use a wide brush, and you don't necessarily have to brush the whole thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get good amount of paint on the brush, and then just kind of like that. So I'm not covering the whole thing. And I'm also going to get some light, some white or lighter gray, and kind of get it on there so I can get a color variation. And then I'll just stamp it. And there we go. I got a nice cobblestone effect there. So I'll just put some more paint on there. And a little bit of light. And you can kind of hit it a few times. Get some lighter ones on there. All right, so I'm happy with that grouping of cobblestones. Now what I'm going to do is I'll just wipe this off. So just wipe off the excess paint. I'll let this dry and then we'll start adding more detail. Got my road section here and the bricks have dried up. So what I'm going to do is use a sponge. This one has kind of a grill scrubbing pad on it, and I'm going to use that to do the dirt. So I'll just get my earth brown and apply it to the damp sponge. I've damped this already. Cover the sponge. And then I'll start stamping on. Now you want to kind of keep away from the areas that have the bricks. And if you get some overlap, that's quite all right. All right, so I got a nice dirt texture on there. Take a look at that. Okay, so we'll let this dry and then we'll work on it some more. Got to add another layer of texture on this. This road also has some gravel on it, loose gravel, so I thought this kind of sponge would be really nice. It's one of those little scrubby sponges, so it has like a little texture on it. And I thought that'd give a really nice rubble effect, or a gravel effect. So I'm going to turn it over, and then I've wet it already, and I'm just going to start applying gray to it. And generous. And you can kind of see the texture there. So let me grab my road section. And you can see it's flattened out since it dried out. So now I'll just start stippling that on there. That's giving a really nice kind of gravelly look. And this is just the same gray I used when I did the cobblestones. Slapping that on. All right. So that's looking really good. So I'll let that dry for a second, and then I'm going to do one more step, and then we'll be finished with the road. Now what I'm going to do is take my sponge and just turn it on the other side, and I'm going to put some light gray on there. So similar kind of thing. I'm just going to stipple some of this light gray on there to get a little variance of tone, color. So I'll just start stippling that on there. Here's a nice little variance in the color. And so now what I'm going to do is let this dry, and then I'll show you what it looks like with some minis. So this is how your table might look when you set the road down. It came out really nice. The stone texture really pops out of the road. You can see the areas where the stone is kind of has not been worn out or worn down, but there are some dirt areas and some gravel areas. So it's a nice combination of techniques. So generally, what I would do is I would, story mode or role play the encounter part. With the road, and until the players actually encounter the enemy, I wouldn't put this down. Now I have my nice green little tablecloth here. This is just a couple yards of cloth that I bought at a fabric store, and it has a little bit of a pile on it, which is really nice. It gives it that kind of a grass texture. So that's a nice touch, and this cloth itself really has a nice kind of just foliage color. Or grass color, and I really like that. So this is a great, I use this all the time. I use this kind of tablecloth all the time for outdoor encounters. So I would generally leave the tablecloth down and then add the other stuff as they encounter it. And I usually describe what's happening while I'm putting the stuff down. So the players aren't just sitting there watching me put stuff down. I'm explaining to them stuff, or I'm having them roll a perception check. For in this example, that you explain how the players are traveling down this road and everything, and at a certain point you have them, and then after the description you would have them roll their perception check. So they roll a perception check, and I've got some enemies that are waiting to ambush anybody on the road. So it would be between the players noticing that and the enemies being able to hide. However your perception check, however it works. It's an opposed thing. I actually like the new term they use, the contest. It's a contest thing. I actually like to use that term. So you can see these are just separate stands with plants stuck in them, and this is the road that we did, and I just overlapped it a little bit so it kind of blends in to the other part. So now, depending on how well the players roll their perception check, is how well you could set them up in the encounter. People have talked, you don't make the players make the perception check because then they'll know something's happened. Well, at this point in the story, it's a done deal. So when I get to this point, I'm explaining the story. When they get to this point, I'll have them roll a group perception check. And if they want to, and then if they do well, I'll put them in a better position. And if they don't do so well, then I'll put them in a worse position. So what I have is do is roll the perception check, and then it would be like a contest against the enemy's stealth check, and they get a big bonus because they are in this foliage. And the way I treat these kind of stands is that the entire stand is that type of cover. So even though there's big areas between the plants, if someone's standing here, they're not necessarily out in the open. There's plants all on this whole stand. It's just anything on the stand would get the certain cover bonus. So that's how I would do it. So say that if the players roll really well versus the enemies, I might have them start out whatever order they want. I may, if they don't do so well, I may put them in the order I want, unless they had a particular marching order. So if they do really well, then I would start placing the enemies in the foliage so they could see them. But if they did okay but didn't do great, then I might place black beads, which I've shown before, which this is a nice way to signify that the players saw something moving in the foliage, but they didn't exactly see what it was. So if they do an okay check, but not a good check, then they may have noticed something in the foliage, but they're not sure what it is. So that's a nice way to mark where they thought the enemy was, but that you're not just putting a model and giving away what it is. So say that the characters did a really bad check, I could have them further up the road, into the ambush, and the enemies, get like a free round to move. So the enemies might burst cover, and get like a free movement round. So you can just work it however it works out for their contest perception check versus the enemy's stealth, and give them a big bonus for cover, of course. Then you can set it up. So just really be mindful, like have the dice or telling what the dice tell you. It's not just a hard number versus a hard number. If they if they just barely make the perception check, you might do what I showed with the black beads. Put some black beads down, maybe not even all of them, just some of them down to show that there is something moving in the bush, but the players aren't sure what it is. If they just fail miserably, they're just on their way. They don't even notice anything going on, and you can give the enemies a surprise attack. If they do great, you could even put some of the enemies down that they may have seen, and then the players could actually get the drop on the enemy. So the players might start back here and then back further down the road, and they see the enemies in the cover waiting to spring an attack, and then they launch their own attack first and get the drop on the enemies. Or somebody maybe breaks off the road and uses their own stealth to try to sneak up on one of the enemies. So really use the terrain and the setup of the board. Set it up how the dice tell you. The dice are telling you a story, so you should look at the dice that way, that it's telling you a story. So this would be a typical road setup, and I hope you enjoyed this vid, and I'll see you next time on the DM's Craft.